for a little pop quiz we're going to have a little later. So stay in touch with your pen and paper, and you'll need it shortly. So as we kick off here, this is probably not unfamiliar to many of you. Something along these lines. We're not techie gurus, but we know we need a good website. How do we avoid the costly false starts that come from thinking that we've got our website piece figured out, but we choose a particular path and end up having some sort of frustrations with it, and those frustrations sort of run the gamut. So some of you in the audience, if we could see a show of hands here, would say we've taken several runs at this. We've tried to build 4 cheap websites. We could have built 2 really great ones for the price we spent on 4 of them. Or the folks that we trusted to get this thing off and running have often run with our money. Or we tried to do it ourselves, and we continually hit our knowledge barriers, and the end result just isn't quite what we had hoped. You can spend an awful lot of time trying to figure this stuff out. You can even enroll in night school classes to try to figure out how to become a web developer on your own. But for many of you've sort of reached the end of your knowledge. You've hit your technical limitations, or perhaps your budget has been stretched to the point where you can't make this as much of a priority as you'd like. It can definitely be a costly distraction when you have a few false starts on getting your parish website up and running. You need to do this well, though. This is the new front door for your organization. You go back 15, 20 years ago, and when a new family, for example, moves to Fayetteville, Georgia, where Becky Murphy is, they might have gotten out the yellow pages to understand what the options were for worship in the area. Well, I don't know about you, but when they deliver our yellow pages, it just helps me feel good about my recycling habits. And very few people are using those resources. They're going to the web. Again, show of hands, how many of you have used Google in the past 30 days? My bet is nearly all of you. How many of you use Google today? Probably most of you. So there's no question this thing is not going away, so I applaud you for taking some time this afternoon to learn how to do web stuff better. We hope this is helpful. So understanding the role of your website. Quite plainly, for our purposes today, here's where we're going with this. Your website is fundamentally about communicating your culture, commitments, and community. These elements have to be clear and compelling for both current members and prospective guests. Your culture, let's talk about that. Every organization has a culture, whether they try to or not. Your parish's culture, you begin that storytelling by what people see online, the commitments, what's important to you, what does your parish value, your community, what does family life look like at your parish, is it inviting, is it a place that has vitality, does it show opportunity to plug in? These are things that people are exploring in real time as they visit your website, even before they've ever set foot on your parish campus. So they have to be clear, compelling. It's the best way that you have. Your website is the best way you have to show what it feels like to be a part of your parish community. So the pressing question is simply this. Does your website match the quality of the worship, the fellowship, and the community your parish provides? You know you've got something special at your parish, and perhaps you've been a part of it a short time or a long time. Nonetheless, you're proud of what you've got. You're willing to tell other people about it. You're excited about going back week after week. That's why you do. You find value in being a part of that parish community. But the outside world doesn't have that same experience. So the question then becomes, how do you accurately reflect the worship, the fellowship, and the community that your parish members enjoy? Also, Are you doing a good job of keeping your current community informed, of keeping them up to speed on opportunities to engage in events that are happening? Is your website accurately taking care of not just the passing guest, but the longtime member that's wanting to understand how I can get further engaged here at this parish? So that's the driving question. You want the outside to understand the quality of the experience that you deliver week after week and the opportunities to engage with others. Brian, anything to add on this particular question?
Yeah, one thing to keep in mind is the quality of the site does not necessarily mean the size of it. And parishes and churches come in at all different sizes and abilities to do sites. But the core kind of communication values and areas of hitting with just kind of key components will serve you well no matter what size of the site. And sometimes, there are sites where it's best to build in increments, but there's an intentional kind of core structure that we're going to talk about today. But hopefully in time you come to build in place and get that right foundation so that you have a site for a while.
So here's the challenge. Perception is reality. There's just no way around it. And prospective visitors only know what they can gather from word of mouth and your website. If you think back to your experience, unless you just grew up in the parish that you're currently attending, chances are someone invited you because they appreciated their experience, they appreciated the value that they got out of the parish you attend, and you said, "Okay, I'm gonna give that a shot," and you showed up because you were encouraged via word of mouth. More and more the trend is you tell your friend about your parish, and where's the second place they go if they're really interested? Chances are the second stop will be the website even before they actually come on site to experience your parish. And perception is reality. What they see, right or wrong, is what they believe to be true about your ministry, about your worship experience, about your missions outreaches, about your youth programs, your educational opportunities. This is what they believe, and if you have a stale and outdated web presence, that generally equates to a pretty boring place in the prospect's mind. On the other hand, if it's vibrant, if it's current, if it is up to date and an accurate expression of what's happening there, when they hit the home page, they don't see where are we? This is the 3rd of March. They don't see the Christmas cantata announcement as the most recent news item or most recent calendar item. It shows that you pay attention to keeping your people informed. And that vibrant web presence is an inviting and interesting place to be. So, what we're talking about here is making sure that there is a positive first impression. You need to make sure that the impression they get is on par with the experience they'll receive when they come on campus. Brian, anything else to add here?
Yeah, it's just a time. I mean, websites certainly aren't going anywhere, and there's a disproportional importance in getting these basic things right in a website. And pretty much all manner of traditional exposure to the community are so inferior. Phone books and listings and local ads, even in Christian ads. I think we all know that they're drastically less helpful at explaining who the congregation is. So getting these foundations is, essential for the website itself and for all of the other peripheral communication areas that the church works into.
Very good. So remember that pen and paper we talked about? It's time to go ahead and break that out because we've got a pop quiz for you. Got 20 questions, and we'll talk about rating your website here. So on a scale of 1 to 10, rate your parish website on the following 20 questions. And the rating scale goes like this. If it's a 10, that means you wrote the book on this particular topic. Actually, more statements. It's sort of a true-false question, but 10 is it's really true, and false is it's really false. 5, we call 5 average, or another way to say average is best of the worst and worst of the best. And 1, you just need to go ahead and surrender your mouse and go back to the yellow pages. So 10, you're killing it. 1, you're being killed. Here we go. Statement 1. We are delighted to point people to our website. It looks great, is up to date, and accurately portrays our ministry. Give you a few seconds to evaluate each one. I know some of you are probably flying solo on this here, but I would assume that we have several teams that have dialed in with us this afternoon and are able to sort of group think the responses to these. You know, what you want to do is, across these 20 statements, it's impossible to work on all 20. So as we go through these, pick out 2 to 3 you know that you can realistically work on and get better at. So number 2 is we own our domain name. We know where it's registered, when it expires, and how to renew it. Very simple question.
And this is an area.
Go ahead, Brian.
Right. But if this is done wrong, which I've unfortunately seen examples, at the last minute they get a notice that it's about to expire, and they go scrambling to find out who was responsible for that, and maybe that person no longer works at the church, and it's something that you can manage yourself, or you can get assistance and manage these things, but it's a small but crucial element of maintaining a website.
Yeah, very, very important. If you lose your domain name, the first way that you know it is generally that your email no longer works. And then you'll quickly discover that your website's not up, and then you could spend $400 to $600 to get it back if you're able to get it back. So, again, a lot of times in parish websites, it's not unusual for some well-intentioned person to put the domain name in his or her personal name rather than a generic email address like the info email address we've set up for this webinar. Number 3, moving on. We can easily update our content without needing to engage a technical person. That's a programmer or a developer or a designer to make the edits for us. So you can log in via the web and make changes on the fly. No hesitation, no problem, no bottlenecks, no delays. And you don't have to be a techie to make that happen. If that's indeed the case, and it's easy to do so, you're a 10. If you are frustrated by the rigors of emailing your content to someone else and waiting 2 to 10 days or longer, 10 months to get simple edits done, you're probably below the 5 level. Number 4, our site is easy to navigate. That's a simple one.
It's
carry on.
Yeah, it's also it's a simple one. You would think it's straightforward, but organizations large and small, getting started and very experienced, often have a great difficulty with doing this right. And so no matter how big your site is, you need to think ahead and plan out a very intuitive structure of guiding people from, the generals to the specifics. And it's sometimes helpful to even ask around the church or congregation, the people, who you would find helpful in this, just kind of get their opinion on some categories. And chances are, if you're on the same page with them, then people in your community are going to find help with that.
Yeah, we'll talk about navigation more later, and we get into the design phase. Number 5, we have a section on our website set up for visitor orientation. It's easy to find, just one click away from the home page. So you have a page or more, preferably more, that is set up to speak just to what the visitor can expect. This would be all sorts of questions, frequently asked questions. Don't necessarily have to be in an FAQ format, but you've thought through very specifically what the visitor needs to know before they come on campus. Number 6, our site has a calendar that accurately reflects our parish activities. This is an easy one. We do an awful lot of work for schools, and I can tell you the 2 most popular pages on school websites are the athletics pages and the calendars. On parish/church web properties, the calendar gets a lot of activity. And if your website has sermon audio, that also gets a lot of traffic. Number 7, our parish site features strong photography of our own people. Not just stock images, not something shot on a Polaroid and scanned, but it actually uses well thought through photography of your people.
And when you're doing photography, you don't need many examples. To have a few well-produced photos, whether inside or outside, of people, and often just having places that are recognizable in the community brings a lot of warmth and a genuineness to the site. I'll often get direct marketing pieces and see the same photos of the same family for 8 different people in town, and I instantly have some sense of distance from the organization. So it takes a little bit of planning, but it goes a long way to really being personable.
Number 8, we use our logo consistently on both our website and print materials inside and outside the building. In other words, you have one version of your logo, not 6 or 7. You have standardized the colors. You have a unified brand expression to where if someone were to look at the information packet or the visitor packet they receive when they come in person, it will look an awful lot like the visual experience they had on your website. So 10 if you're killing it, 1 if you're being killed. 9, our parish colors are clearly defined. We even know our Pantone numbers. Show of hands, how many of you know what a Pantone number is? Brian's got his hand up. Tell us what a Pantone number is, Brian.
It sounds technical, but it's worth knowing. There are these color books, and most of the vendors that you'll ever work with, whether you're printing paraments or stitching paraments or any number of the materials, vehicle wraps, signage outside, the first thing they're going to ask you are, what color do you have? And if you give them that color, you might have 1 or 3, however many, they'll get exactly what you're looking for, and you won't have an unpleasant surprise.
Yeah, I could think of churches I've been to where they had 6 different shades of blue. If blue is one of their strong colors, or a deep crimson that has morphed into a fuchsia over time. So, know your colors and be careful with them. That's the moral of number 9. Number 10, we know our website has played a key role in persuading guests to visit our parish. It's an easy one. Number 11, our website comes up on the first page of Google when you search for parishes in, and fill in the blank here wherever you are. So Philip Rutledge from Bell River, Ontario, if someone does a search in Bell River, Ontario, are you coming up on the first page of Google? Notice I'm not saying position 1. Position 1 is overrated. It's nice to be there, but if you're on page 2 of Google, you might as well be invisible. I'm interested in landing on page 1 as high as we can. Number 12, we have and utilize the traffic monitoring tools built into our website, such as Google Analytics or Urchin Stats. This makes an assumption that you have traffic monitoring tools. If you have them, do you utilize them? Do you know what sort of traffic is coming across your site and which pages are popular? Number 13, we have a blog built into our site. Blogs can be a tremendous waste of time. They can also be vital tools for an organization if there's a plan and a promotion. aside from the search engine optimization value, because Google is very much interested in new content, fresh, relevant content being added to your site, they're a great way just to carry on a conversation with your members, with your congregation, and to provide a peek into the culture of your community, of your parish community, to outsiders. Number 14, our site uses social media such as Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, etc. For those of you who have not kept up with social media, you might be interested to know that late last year, Facebook actually took over Google as the most trafficked site on the web. More hits per day than Google, which is amazing. Most heavily used by ladies in their 30s. So interesting stats. You're going to see a lot more about Facebook and other social media in the coming months. Matter of fact, that's going to be a focus of Session 2. If you haven't signed up for Session 2, we have a handful of spots. We're going to talk about more advanced promotional tools for websites, including social media. 15, we make time weekly to keep our website updated. Once a month just isn't enough anymore for a parish when people are more connected than ever. Nielsen said that by third quarter of this year, more than 50% of the U.S. population will have smartphones. That means that they're going to have full browser compatibility right there on their person. So are you doing a good job of keeping your website updated, because people are getting more and more information on the fly?
And in addition to that, there's all sorts of studies that show if there are a consistent means of updating a site, you'll create a level of expectation, and then you can manage traffic. But if there are spikes, maybe you're diligent for a while and a lot of things, and then it falls by the wayside. That's very harmful, just to people expecting to see something there. So even doing a small amount but consistently is better than sporadic.
Yes. Our members regularly use the website to learn about important information pertaining to our parish. This is more of an inward-focusing question. We've talked a lot about what a casual website visitor might expect and hope to experience, but have you made your website a hub of traffic for your parish community? Do they rely on it for key information?
And again, structurally, sorry, Andy, structurally, when we had the question about site navigation and we talked about a section for visitors, the idea of this division is that you have one part of your site devoted and a way to reach into the church, and then another where you've worked out of the church. And so that's immediately two kind of categories of a website.
This next one, this is a very pointed question. Our leadership values our website. Are you a 1, 5, 10, 7? Does your leadership understand and take seriously the role of the web in communicating your mission to the local community and abroad? Number 18, our site utilizes sermon audio tools such as podcasting. Much more cost-effective to do today than it ever has been, and a lot easier than it's ever been. Plenty of third-party plugins, even some that have limited services for free. So if you don't have that in place, I'd encourage you to take a look into that. 19, our email addresses use the same domain name as our website address. So Reverend John at graceanglican.org, for example. You can get domain-specific email through Gmail at no cost, being a nonprofit. So if you're still using an at AOL or at Hotmail or even a Gmail account, I'd encourage you to take a more professional approach with your email, and it's free through Gmail.
Which is a great service, and one of the aspects of just consistent email and website names are it just reminds people in the community to go to that place. Whereas if you have personal emails, it in some ways loses the cohesiveness of a unified domain listing.
Sorry about that. Number 20, we understand that the web is not a passing trend, but rather an essential part of our communication efforts. Hopefully you realize this stuff is not going to go away, and the world will keep moving around you, and the communications tools will continue to morph and change into new opportunities to connect faster, particularly with the growth of social media. Some people have even predicted the end of email thanks to tools like Facebook. Okay, so there's the 20 questions. Quick survey, what's your total out of 200 points? Any surprises? Did you get any indication of what you might need to work on next? So generally when we do a survey like this, I encourage you to huddle up with whomever at your parish would be engaged in your web responsibilities and say, folks, we can't do 10 things well. We can do 2 things well or 3 things well. What are we going to pick? Who's going to be responsible for these things, when they need to be done, and what does a win look like? So pick the ones where you need the most improvement and go for it. Let's move on.
And just by the way, I want to remind everyone that we will be uploading this video presentation onto the web, so you can always go back and review those questions if you want to share them within your parish and think through your own strategy for the church community.
Yeah, we got a few questions that came in about these being posted. We will post the PDF, and I do have this recording, so God willing, we'll have the audio, the entire presentation available as an MPEG download, provided the technology cooperates. So moving into the meat of the presentation here, what's the big deal about our parish's website? Well, let's talk about some of these things. Why is this important? Your website is the new front door of your parish. Potential visitors will visit you online before they ever set foot in your parish in person. This trend is not going to go away. People are doing more and more research online on their own time, and it's true for parishes as well. They're getting a whole lot of questions answered, at least they think they are, before they ever make any informed decisions. I wonder, when you have a guest come and fill out a card, or however you do that, do you actually ask how they found out about you, and do you ask if they visited your website? I encourage you to do that. The numbers would be very intriguing. Next, you're engaged in a society that does its homework online and makes decisions without your input. You don't really have an opportunity to pull them aside and say, well, I know this portion of our site's a little dated, but let me catch you up on how things really look. You don't really have that option when people are doing their research at 10 p.m. at night or 11 o'clock at work. They're making decisions entirely on their own. Denominational lines are blurring. Traditional church distinctions are less familiar to your visitors, and I dare say your members as well. If you go back a couple decades, you'd probably have more people who are able to clearly enunciate the differences between major denominations. Well, the fact is, denominations mean less and less to today's church visitors. I dare say that most people in your congregation would have trouble clearly identifying the major distinctions between, let's just say, Baptist, Lutheran, Anglican, Methodist. Just pick some of the popular ones and say, truly, what is the difference here? So the web is a great leveler, and that if someone puts in churches or parishes in a particular area, all sorts of stripes and strains of worship opportunities will come up, and the definition of each means less and less.
And we would simply want to add to that that in terms of your kind of communication strategy, it is the place to kind of set the tone and the expectation. If there are certain distinctives that are paramount to your community, the web is the first place to notify people of that. Or if you intentionally don't make sharp distinctions, it's also the opportunity to have people come and find out for themselves.
Very true. And people expect more from websites. They're more connected than ever. The entertainment value that they experience on a regular basis is higher than ever. And just think about it. We've got Sirius and XM radio. We have cable or satellite TV, each with hundreds, if not thousands, of channels. There are billboards every time they go outside, all sorts of magazines and newspapers, etc. There's just such a high degree of communication that they receive on a regular basis. People are becoming experts at tuning out information that's not interesting to them. Therefore, you have to work harder to connect with them in a meaningful way when they do hit your website. With that said, clean, crisp professionalism, strong photography, good colors, good branding, clear information goes an awful long way to communicating some very simple messages. People expect more than ever.
However, as we're discussing, and more expectations than ever, that does not need to translate to spending more money than ever. Unfortunately, we see many examples of that. And the thing I think we would want you all to take away is that it's doing the rudimentary things well, being very thoughtful about why you're adding this image or why you're adding this communication. Or is it necessary to use Twitter on this frequency or at all, but being very intentional and knowing in advance who you're trying to communicate to and how you're intending to benefit them. So it's just a very more intentional use of any of these tools rather than rushing out and being poor stewards of resources when you could do it just smart and wisely.
That's right. And Brian, what you're talking about has to do with the next point. You probably don't have a big advertising budget. Word of mouth should always be your number one promotional tool. But secondly, where's the next landing pad? It is absolutely the website. It's the most efficient and most visible outreach tool you have. So, moving on. Common challenges parishes work through when building and maintaining websites. Here we go. Our site hasn't been updated in months, maybe even years. I had a call yesterday from a school. Their site was built in 1996 and has not been updated since then. 15 years. That's the best one I've seen. Hopefully, none of you can beat that. But it becomes extremely obvious to someone who's just passing through. You don't have to work hard to know whether or not a site's been updated recently. This is a common bottleneck we see with a lot of parishes. This hasn't been updated in months. Next. And
as we talked about earlier, the way that a site is built, again, whether it's a very small or a robust site, is going to make updating easier or harder. I spoke with someone yesterday about a brand new site that a business had built, and they were excited about it, and they found out that there were no updates able to be made ever across the site, and the site was completely inaccessible to search engines. So as we began the call, knowing in advance what the needs are and the qualifications of whether you have someone in your church who can build it, or you need help with a business, or how you can do it yourself, however it is, knowing the objectives and making sure to go slowly towards that. So there are no really unpleasant surprises.
Yeah, another piece of that bottleneck, I have to email my changes to someone else, then wait to get our site updated. If I could get a show of hands from the audience, please, how many of you have either currently have or have had a version of your website where you were dependent upon a techie or a designer, perhaps someone doing this at nights on the weekends to update important information? My sense is probably the majority of the audience has experienced that. Our site looks tired. I don't want visitors evaluating our parish by what they see on the web. Was at a conference recently where one lady said our website is an abomination, and I thought that's probably the most graphic descriptive I've heard for a ministry related website. Hopefully none of you can say that, but you do know if your site feels a little tired, a little staid. Perhaps it uses some corny graphics, or the text over time it's just turned into sort of a patchwork quilt. So if you're embarrassed to send people to your site, now's a good time to get serious about refreshing that. And next, we have some CMS software, but it's complex and clunky. I'm not going to tell you what CMS is. I want somebody to hit me in the chat there and let me know what CMS stands for. Only one person knows how to update our site. It's so frustrating to keep it current. All right. Oh, there it is. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Philip. Thank you, John. Bing, bing, bing. Good. Content management system. Thank you, Theresa. All right, and they're pouring in from all over the states. Have some content management system software. This could look like Dreamweaver, which they no longer make and support, or Front Page, which is no longer made or supported. The best practice currently is to have a web-based content management system, so you can log in from wherever you are, make your changes, etc., and move on without being a techie or a designer. So how do we get the most out of our web presence? Well, first you have to have one, and you know you're all here, so you all must value this in some way. Believe it or not, I would not be surprised if there are folks on the call who do not have a web presence, and well, that's where you need to start, and I'm glad you're on the call. It's got to look professional. We talked about this earlier. People just expect more from their web experience, and the content has to be on target. You don't want too much, you don't want too little. People go to your site to do the research they want to do and to be helped, not to leave with more questions than when they started. Easy to find. We live in Google's world right now. Bing and Yahoo largely follow suit. If you optimize for Google, you've optimized for Bing and Yahoo, and we'll talk more about that in session 2. You know, you got to make it worth their time. If they're going to give you some of their time, you need to help them make the most out of their experience and be helpful. Be a good steward of the time they've given you. And lastly, have realistic expectations. You know, just because you launch a site on a Thursday doesn't mean you'll have a doubled congregation by Sunday. I know you wish it was the contrary, but you just need to have realistic expectations. Getting there from here, what does this look like? Well, first of all, I'd encourage you to value professional design. Just because you have a nephew who has a roommate in college whose best buddy does this sort of kind of on the side when he's not working at Walgreens, doesn't mean that you found the right designer. Cheap does not always equate to good, nor does expensive always equate to value. But I would encourage you, look at the quality of the portfolio of designer that you want to engage. Keep the navigation simple. It should read from left to right like a book. You know, the home, the about. What does that progression look like? Are you unfolding information in such a way through your navigation that it's very intuitive for people to follow? You know your technical content or your technical limits. Know what is worth your time to do and what's better sent somewhere else. I've seen a lot of websites that are just black holes for people's time that they'll never get back, and they end up having to scrap the project and redo it simply because they tried to do more than they had time or technical capacity to do. Use high quality photography. We talked about that. Use your people. It gives them something to talk about too. Take search engines seriously. Do a good job for Google, and the others will follow along. Use a simple, supported content management system. We're big WordPress fans. It's an open framework, can be easily adapted to all sorts of different design content. We do use Silver Stripe as well for more robust sites like the AmericanAnglican.org site. That's several thousand pages that content management system supports. Keep your content fresh. You need to keep good churn on your homepage in particular. We're going to talk about what sort of content. Vincent's asking about what sort of content you need to have. What are you looking for in a church website? We'll talk a little bit more about that on the next couple slides here. Focus on the fundamentals, as Brian mentioned. You can't do all these things well. All 20 of the statements we talked about earlier, you will not be a 10 on all of them. But so focus on the fundamentals, know your limits, and get into the rhythm and the routine of keeping your website fresh. Carefully plan for your audience. Well, what does that look like? I'm glad you asked. I've gotten several questions here through the chat about what sort of information needs to go on this site. Well, this is audience planning. This is by no means an exhaustive list, but you can see we have three major groups here. We've got current attendees, parish staff, and then prospective guests. You could come up with other groups, but this is a good way just to start thinking about what sort of information you need to have in the site before you ever even write the first word. So under current attendees, news and events, sermon audio, resources, service opportunities. That's just getting the list started of what current attendees would be interested in. Your parish staff, news and events, blogs, audio, staff openings, campaigns and appeals, password-protected content. Prospective guests, this is where you need to spend most of your time. This is some very basic stuff. One that should be on here is phone number. It's amazing. I've been to some ministry websites where the phone number is hidden 3 or 4 levels deep. The service times are hidden. You ought to be connected on your location to Google Maps and reserving your Google Places page, which we'll talk about in session 2. Worship style, what to expect when they show up. The events calendar, ministry opportunities, offerings for the families, doctrinal statements. I could keep on going. What about child care? You diagram like this and figure out as best you can what people will be expecting when they hit your site. And by the way, everything that you see here can be managed through, we're big WordPress proponents. You can manage all this content on your own through a simple content management system like WordPress.
And the amazing thing about content management systems is they've drastically made improvements in how clear and simple they are. And so what 5 years ago took someone with a little bit of coding experience today, within an hour or two, you will feel more empowered to take the site where it needs to go than ever.
Yeah, good point, Brian. Let's talk about the money piece because everybody's interested in what sort of money this requires. Glad you asked. Well, here we go. Let's talk about the components first so we know exactly what's being expected of your site before we can put any numbers on it. You have 4 basic components of every site on the web. I don't care if we're talking about CNN.com or AmericanAnglican.org or Northstar.ac or ICASCreative.com. You have design, which is your logo and colors, photography, layout, design, navigation. You have the content. That's the audience planning exercise that we just went through, and then the informational writing itself. You have programming, and I would say your site should not hit the web unless it has content management tools built in. And custom programming, that would be, for example, if you wanted to take donations online, you could do that. RSVPs online, which you can build forms through most generic content management systems, but custom programming in and of itself is aside from content management. Hosting. Under hosting, make sure you have adequate storage, you have good backups, so not just one version of your site on a single server, and also that you're dealing with a company that's large enough to support what they've sold you. Assessing the cost. And let me first say on this screen that getting a cost on a web project, remember, the web is kind of like the Wild West There are no cost standards. There are no hard and fast design standards that are beholding to some sort of international governing body. So it's pretty much whatever you're willing to pay for whatever they're willing to charge you. That's why it's good to make sure that you've done your homework on the people that you're interested in building with. So build options or do it yourself. There are plenty of DIY options out there. Just go to Google and say DIY website, see what you get. You can hire a freelance person. Just in the for what it's worth category, make sure your freelance person has a history of following up and sticking around. Hire a company. Again, check the track record, check the references, see what they've done. Build ranges, you could spend a few $100. Church sites we built range anywhere from $1,500 up to $10K. Most in that 3 to 6 range, in my opinion. Plenty of latitude in there based on budget to get what you need. Key considerations when selecting a developer. Philosophy and portfolio have to line up. We do an awful lot of work in the pro-life movement. Brian and I both. We do a lot of work for churches, parishes, Christian schools. Philosophically, we're on board. As believers, we get this stuff. I will tell you that there are plenty of developers who have very little appreciation and certainly not a personal understanding of your parish's mission. Secondly, look at the portfolio. Portfolio has to be in line with the expectations. If they do C-grade work and you want an A-level website, don't hire them. Technical savvy, make sure that your developers understand what they're talking about and not just throwing around semantics. Design skills, again, look at portfolio. Support and backups, this is a good one. Ask about the hosting environment and ask what happens if you have a question. Do you email? Do you call? What's the turnaround time on getting help? Longevity of the web firm, have they been doing this a while or did they just start last week? The cost and turnaround are not necessarily the first issues, but they are valid issues.
And one thing on the technical savvy, this is often the disappointing or tricky part of building websites because what you see on the visual side of the site has very little bearing with what's functioning on the back end, and that you just need to be, WordPress, Silverstripe, some of these content management system technologies that we've mentioned are very stable, but you just need to look into and don't assume that because it's designed well on the front end, its appearance, that it's going to translate over to how well it works.
Yeah, good point. We've received several questions through the chat here, and briefly just want to touch on some of those. If you have any others, go ahead and send those in. Let's see. So while we answer some questions, I just want to show you two sites to demonstrate some design specific. Okay, everybody see that? It's the American Anglican website. Again, navigation is clean, reads like a book, and Robert and his crew maintain this on their own. We have done very little updating for this site aside from initial content migration. You see he's got very clear navigation here at the top, engaging photography. You got news, you got resources, you've got some featured items, strong consistency in the colors. I'm going to show you a website for a church that we launched just last week, and this is a very simple site. These are actually their people. This is not an overly complex church site by any means. I just want to point out a few of the elements here. Again, top navigation with drop-down menus, which they're able to control, a little bit of orientation content, rotating image. I remember we talked about this. Do you have information set aside for your guests? Are you new here? These featured items it's a meshing of a calendar with a graphic. That's nice. And then here are the big three things they want you to see: sermon series, Sunday school, and the leadership. Online giving button at the bottom. service times, directions, church calendar, phone number, email. These are the basic elements. Logo at the top, which also serves as a home button. Doesn't have to be set up this way. Any number of ways you could do it. Both this and the AAC site are driven by content management tools. A content management system simply allows you to log in and add, edit, delete information on demand. If you're not quite sure what that looks like and are interested in learning more about it, we'd be happy to show you with a GoToMeeting.
Suzanne, we'll cover that more in the second session, but just generally speaking, a content management tool is a means for you to manage your site without the need of technical people. So if you build your site with a content management system, generally speaking, once you've built it and paid for it, you're free to take it from there.
Right.
One of the biggest difficulties in early websites that this was the solution that a myriad programmers came up with.
There was a question here about, let's see, Joy asked about privacy. Wonder if you have any suggestions for parishioners who are concerned about privacy. My recommendation is to do a custom photo shoot and get consent forms. You can just Google photography consent forms, and most anything that pops up will work. But just get them to say, I give you permission to use my image, and be very specific about how you utilize those images. Let's see. Online directories. I typically recommend that a church password protect its online directory. I mean, that's sensitive information. There are an awful lot of people that would love to get a list of your parishioners to sell them things. Let's see. And you can password protect all sorts of content. Just remember, though, you do want quite a bit of your content to be available to the general public because they want to know what sort of culture you have. Are people enjoying themselves? Let's see.
And that can often be simply done of locations where you're meeting for events, publicly available stuff, but that's relating to what's going on within the parish.
Teresa Taylor asked, what info do you recommend being in the visitor section? I'd encourage you, we're going to post this in PDF form again. Just take a look at the audience planning page. That'll be a good starter, but don't take it for granted that people know where you are. Make sure you have service times clearly laid out on the home page and subsequent pages, a link back. Doctrinal statement's important. Leadership overview is important. I encourage the parishes and churches we work with to stay away from the sort of staid, traditional, here's this guy behind a pulpit looking very astute and somewhat stern. Show personality. Get shots in very natural, organic settings. Show personality more than ever. It's important.
And even just zooming out, the personality, how the message, the gospel infusing that community has affected people. So you're displaying the end result of the real vitality within the community.
We will be recording the next session as well, session 2, and we're going to get more into promotion of the site, social stuff, search engine optimization, broadcast email, things of this nature. Today we wanted to focus primarily on what does it take to get going. How do we move forward from where we are to take the next step? So some very foundational stuff today. Good design, good photography, good content management system, and a company that can support it. Lots of ways to get this done. Of course, we would be delighted if any of you have a need and would like to talk further about your specific projects. We've done this a time or two, and we'll be pleased to see if we could walk you through that process as well. My email address is there, Brian's is there, and feel free to connect with us as you like. There is a survey. We would appreciate your feedback, AmericanAnglican.org/survey that Robert has set up. You get to grade us. We help you grade yourselves on those 20 questions. Now you get to give us some feedback, which we'd very much appreciate, how we could do this better. will email you out a notice when the second piece is set up, when the files are posted and the audio of this is available as well. In that, we will have a link for session 2. I can tell you seating is limited. If we have enough demand for that, we'll do a second version as well. Well, thank you for being with us this afternoon. I want to be conscious of your time. We are grateful for the opportunity that American Anglican Council has afforded us to speak with you. Hope this has been beneficial. Granted, we're talking to a wide range of expertise here. Some of you have been at this a long time. Hopefully this has been pleasantly amusing, and some of you are just at the outset of your web projects. And if we could be of any assistance along the way, please don't hesitate to email us. We'd be glad to help you. Thanks again for your time, folks. Brian, anything from you?
I just want to say, again, we really appreciate your time, and we hope that this has really given you some things to consider. And in the years of experience we have, we've given you a good foundation that you can go a long way with. Thank you so much for your time.
Robert, if you're still with us, anything that you'd like to add?
Thanks for joining us, guys. This is Robert Lundy with the American Anglican Council. If you're interested in knowing more, if it's just whet your appetite, so to speak, look back on acwebinar.com and look into signing up and for the second session of this forum. And maybe if we get enough people to sign up, we can pressure Brian and Andy into doing a second one for the second version. So anyway, God bless.
Thank you all. Hope you've enjoyed it this afternoon, and we wish you the best.